We all take a stand, whether we're on TV or we're out to our families or we start the journey to come out to ourselves. And that's really how it started. The decision wasn't just because of Rachel Maddow, although she is quite an influential person to me. I think Proposition 8 in California did a lot to stir my conscience and tell me that, remind me that, and never allow me to forget that our people are very discriminated, and it's not about me coming out and being liberated or feeling that sense of freedom. As soon as I was chosen as spokesperson for our group, West Point graduates, people were emailing me saying that they didn't know they could survive. They didn't know if life was worth living. And one soldier in Afghanistan said that he wanted to run his Humvee off the cliff. And then I'd realize why it was important to be so public. It's not for us. While it does feel good, and for some of us, even though there are consequences and risks of telling the truth, the most important thing to remember is that there are other people who need you to be out and very public. Generations tend to think differently when it comes to civil rights, and every movement for civil rights has had that issue, the older generation versus the younger generation. But I sometimes have felt the opposite to be true in my journey. Some of the older generation veterans have come up to me and reminded me that the younger generation inspires them to come out more and to realize that there not only isn't anything to lose, but they have a newfound duty, responsibility, and obligation that they never had in their time in service or just becoming a veteran or retired military personnel. And so they remind me that the child, the boy, is the father of the man. The things that the younger generation are able to put out there so fearlessly, such utility for the greater movement. Of course, the younger generation gets it. I mean, you go to colleges or high schools and they say, what? They're kicking you out just because you're an American who happens to be gay. And I just wonder where we're going to be in the future generation from now. They'll look back at us and they'll say, what did you do back in 2011 when our civil rights movement was just pushing, just starting to push? And they'll want to know that we did our best, that we saw no fear and no compromise when there was a struggle to be had.
Role model?
I think we're all role models. So I'm actually a little bit humbled. I feel inadequate, actually, to accept this award because there's so many heroes that are here. And I look at the people who are my role models, and they're not necessarily the ones who are the most famous or the most privileged or the most powerful. When I look at the leaders of our movement, first of all, must choose its leaders and define itself through baseline fundamental principles, values, integrity, and sacrifice. And when I think of those who have the most integrity and sacrifice the most, I look at our homeless youth, the ones that were kicked out of their homes because their parents said they don't love them anymore. Can you imagine the amount of sacrifice because of their integrity that they possess and that they inspire us to continue sacrificing and having integrity? They're my role models. So compared to them, I'm very much a nothing in this movement. And I think that when we look at those role models we should look up to and emulate, we should emulate that. And regardless of the cost, regardless of the price, we measure our leaders based on how much they're willing to give up and how stridently, ardently, and continuously they're willing to keep fighting. They're all worthwhile for me to understand, because whether somebody has a certain agenda or not, those thoughts are in somebody's heart. And while I recognize that we're all coming at this movement from different places in our journey, Um, I know the direction I'm going based on the values I know are our baseline fundamentals. So long as you remember that this movement depends on our willingness to tell the truth, you only have to do one thing, and that is you don't give up until you achieve what it is you set out to accomplish. Everything else will fall into place. Everything, including the money, the supporters, your messaging, the media, all of that will happen. But you have to do one thing. Decide you won't quit. And unfortunately, in our movement, that commodity and that character is in short supply, and my job is simply by my being and continuing to exist and to survive and to stride forward, my only goal is to inspire more of that. So that's what I tell these young 30-year-old and under, these college kids and these high school kids. I try to inspire them and tell them all the criticism that you get from those who have the power, who consider themselves elite, who are unwilling to, because they think there is a zero-sum game in our movement towards equality, are unwilling to share the platform. I remind them that it was those young, upstart radicals who led every single movement. Joan of Arc, Alice Paul, Dr. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Jesus and all his disciples, and all the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And we can learn from that one very important lesson. When the people who are in positions of power in our movement today remind us of that very same lesson, and they try to encourage us and motivate us to not lose hope because we're young, it always happens to be followed by an ask for volunteering. They say, there's all the 30-year-olds and under, those young kids. They led those movements, and now we need you to step up and phone bank and canvass and get out the vote and pass out flyers or sign up on petitions and forward emails or tweet or Facebook. And they miss the point. It was those young upstarts who had nothing to lose that led the movement. They weren't just the foot soldiers. And the reason why they led the movement is because they were uncompromising. And so any other criticism of my being naive or impetuous, reactionary, or inexperienced, I do take as a compliment. Because I don't want the experience that has subordinated our issues to the back of the bus, whether it be the DNC bus or the political timetable bus or the progressive bus. I don't think that our movement depends on any political timetable. It only depends on us and our willingness not to give up. Yes, I don't see any conflict between serving as a soldier and serving as an activist. They're both sacred forms of service. And in my journey, being an activist has made me a better soldier. Why? Because I know exactly when I put on the uniform what I'm really fighting for. The right and the responsibility and the obligation for all of our citizens to make our country stronger and better and live up to its own promises and its own foundational principles. Not only that, but being a soldier has made me a better activist. I've learned the concepts in real life, discipline and perseverance and putting others before yourself. I tried to stay in the military to serve, keep my rank, keep my status and my pension, my paycheck, my health care, all of that. That's not what service is about. Service, and particularly this uniform, stands for two things: fighting for liberty and fighting for justice. just like our Pledge of Allegiance clearly states, liberty and justice for all. And I feel that if any American who puts on this uniform is not willing to fight for liberty and justice in every aspect of their lives, then they make a mockery of the uniform. So I'm proud to have worn the uniform, not only in combat, but on the front lines for equality. So many people have told me that I should take a step back. This is a marathon, pace yourself. And for somebody like me and many activists out there, with my mindset, that is stubborn, irascible, we don't listen to that advice. We try, but ultimately we don't. We have to have a breakdown, and I had a breakdown, a total breakdown. Physical, mental, nervous, anxiety, all of the post-traumatic stress as a result of depression and insomnia. I didn't really know how to continue on after that, but I just recognized that for people like us, we keep going until we have that breakdown, and then we get back up and keep going until we have another breakdown, and that's the time when we get our rest. And for me, I suppose in that regard, I've never given up my soldier's instincts. I know a soldier does have to rest as well, but I truly believe that this movement is combat. In a real psychological sense, and in a moral sense, and in every sense possible. I sometimes feel like now that the president has signed the bill that will repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I feel that sort of deployed from overseas, or I've returned from deployment overseas, and that I would like to take a break every once in a while, but I guess I just don't know how. And I'm not so worried right now about that. I'm more worried about being an equal citizen and reminding people that as difficult as it is, as difficult as this journey is, it is our job as stigmatized and oppressed minorities to refuse victimization, because the only antidote to victimization is confrontation. And so, while it causes stress, that is the only thing that will cure us of our second-class citizenship, confrontation, and we have to do it perpetually. Well, being an activist is a full-time job, isn't it? I would love to settle down and find a husband. I would love to raise a family, and at the same time go back into the military, perhaps as a reservist, and answer the call as to whatever my country needs me to do. But I'll tell you what I'm not interested in, because I guess that's what really you're asking. I'm not going to run for office. I think that real change doesn't necessarily come with a title or a rank or a certain group of friends. The real change that I'm looking for in this journey and in this struggle is a change within. The don't ask, don't tell inside our own hearts. What good is it to repeal don't ask, don't tell in the military when we're not willing to repeal the don't ask, don't tell in our own homes, in our own churches, in our own minds? We should be proud, honored, and dignified to just be able to keep speaking out. In that regard, I don't need any other title or any other job opportunity or any other career path. Quite fulfilled in just doing that.